time, please? Yeah, so Aaron, when you're speaking, just make sure you speak close to your microphone, and when you're not speaking, just turn your microphone off. Perfect. Sorry, Anna. One more time for the speaking to your microphone. Yeah, that was fine.
All right, Kate.
If something changes, then we'll have you call it. Okay, we good? Mike, we're good? Ted? Good? Good evening, folks. I'm going to call the Bristol Warren Joint Finance Committee meeting to order. Could we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please take your seats. Good evening and welcome. We are definitely going down some uncharted territory that is unprecedented with our times. To my knowledge, this is the first time we've live streamed a meeting in the Warren Town Hall. I do have some opening remarks I would like to make before we get on to introductions. I'd first like to start off by thanking our first responders, our doctors, our nurses, and of course all our police and fire for their efforts to help keep us safe during the current health crisis, and to all our local government workers who have been working tirelessly to make this meeting occur, and especially to my family. Without their support, I wouldn't be here this evening. I guess I forgot to tell you my name, but I am Steve Calendar, and I am the chairman of the JFC. I'd also like to recognize many members of our small business community, local restaurants, bars, and shops, who have closed their doors at great personal loss in order to help prevent the spread of the virus. To our teachers in just 1 week who came up with a way to continue to educate our children via the web. And our parents who are now working from home while simultaneously caring for young children and seniors. I could go on, but I just don't think there is anyone in our community who has not been untouched by the coronavirus. The reality is the world has changed since we started discussing the school budget. Our job as elected officials is to represent your interests and the people who live in the community. To make sure that we're doing our jobs, we spent the last several months talking to hundreds of our constituents, listening to what you want, and understanding your concerns. The problem is, you all don't want the same thing. A family with young elementary school children understandably wants the school budget fully funded. But the fellas who are retired that live next door, who are on a fixed income, that say if their taxes continue to go up, they're in fear of losing their house. There is nothing that the Joint Finance Committee would like to do more than to fully fund the school budget. And there is nothing that we would like to do more than to hold your taxes at a current level. But we can't do both. No matter how tonight's votes turn out, there are going to be people who aren't going to be completely happy. Understanding that we're facing an impossible task, we have done our best to come up with a balanced solution, one that takes into consideration the significant economic changes that have occurred over the last 2 weeks, and one that we believe reflects the best interests of everyone living in our community. Together, we will get through the current health crisis, and we will pass a new school budget, but both are going to require sacrifice from everyone listening to this discussion tonight. I would also like to make sure we have special thanks for Jay Rosenfeld of On Board, who's providing the live stream for tonight's meeting, and Mike Davis and Ken Obashan, who are recording this meeting and have traveled great distance to make sure this meeting occurred. I thank you, and I look forward to continuing the meeting. Moving on, I would like to introduce the fellas and the ladies and gentlemen who are in the meeting. I'm going to go around the room, and I'm going to identify Tim Sweeney. Please identify. Tim is a member of the Bristol Town Council. Sitting to my right is also Town Administrator Steve Contente. Steve, welcome, and thank you for attending. To my immediate right is our Bristol Town Council President, Nate Calero. To my immediate left is our Warren Town Council President, Kerry Cronin. Moving around the room, we have Mary Perella, who I like to refer to as our senior member in politics, over 4 decades, I believe. Approaching. Yeah.
Ouch.
And then we have Tony Texera, also a Bristol Town Council member. And then sitting in the middle, unfortunately, I put her in a seat that is directly in the line of fire, our Warrentown resident, Tamara Kaplan. We also have present our Warrentown clerk, Rhonda Fortin, who will be our recording secretary. At this time, I would like to take roll call because we have one member who is doing this remotely. Aaron Lay, could you please identify yourself by turning on your mic? Aaron, I only caught part of your statement. What is it that you wanted to say? Sounds like a good idea. Please do. So at this point in time, we're just going to hold the meeting until Aaron calls in so he can be up and running on the same format. Dr. Bryce, how is your audio going on right now? Loud and clear, thank you. Mr. Bradshaw, how is your audio going? Yes, that was loud and clear. Thank you. Diane Soers? I'm sorry, Santa, sorry. Thank you, loud and clear. I apologize for mispronouncing your last name. Very small font on my computer screen. Yes. Yes, I can. Since I believe we have everybody up and running on the meeting, I'm going to move to the portion on the agenda of the acceptance of the March 4th minutes. They were distributed via email. Does anyone have any comments or discussion?
Motion to accept the minutes.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. The minutes have been accepted. Yes, sir.
Just want to let you know that our committee chair is on the line, as well as two staff members, Tina Vogel, our chief operating officer, as well as Andrew Markoff, director of student services.
And thank you for that, Dr. Price. I didn't see her on my screen, but I knew she would be calling in. So we have the school committee chairperson, Erin Schofield, who is also on the line. Thank you. So moving forward with the meeting, Dr. Bryce, I'm going to give you an opportunity to give another brief summary of your request for the school budget. So at this time, the floor is yours, sir.
So, thank you very much. I certainly recognize that we are in uncharted waters as we're dealing with the virus and distance learning. I know that everyone is fully aware of our request that we made at our first JFCE. So I certainly won't go through all the details and instead merely focus on the discussion that's going to ensue. What is really important is that for the last 7 days, I would just say, today, yesterday, and Monday, I've actually been as early as last week and part of district staff that's been working to prepare the language that we have to do to learning.
Dr. Bryce, can I just pause you for a second, please? We're just making sure that everyone can hear you on the live stream. Just stand by for 1 second, please. We're bringing another mic forward. Is that better? Sorry about that, Dr. Bryce. Let's continue.
All right, hopefully this is better. And so our staff, whether they be teachers or paraprofessionals, school administrators, district administrators, have really spent probably the last 2 weeks getting us ready to implement distance learning. I will say that it has gone exceptionally well, and that is a testament to the skill that our people have, but it's also a testament to the decisions that the school committee made and previous superintendents to invest in the technology infrastructure. And I say all that to say that given advanced information about the proposed number, I can, without any hesitation, say that we would not be in position to provide distance learning to our young people without a technology infrastructure, without classroom teachers, and that without fully funding our school budget, the JFC is putting the district in the position of not being able to meet the needs of all students. This year we took the unprecedented step of cutting $1.165 billion from the budget before we presented it to you. And as a result, we asked you for a 3.985% increase, which would have been $1,554,954. It is my hope that with, despite everything that's gone on with the United States Congress passing a historic stimulus, that the JFC finds it within their hearts to fully fund the district budget so that we do not get forced to have to make the type of cuts that would be necessary in order to operate. And those cuts would begin with things that are extracurricular. It would then go to any vacancies that currently exist, and then it would get to staff. At some point, the district is going to need additional funding from both towns in order to be successful. So with that, I thank you, and I'll wait your question.
Dr. Bryce, I'm just going to have you pause for a second. We're still having a little bit of technical difficulties here with the audio.
All right, well.
Aren't you the tech guy? Should we all be? Who's the tech guy?
It's coming, I think.
Okay, so should I just shut this down? Should we all turn our computers off? All right. Yeah.
Dr. Bryce, please continue.
Yes. So, again, I would just share with everyone the unprecedented steps that the district took to actually identify $1.165 million in cost containment efforts prior to submitting a budget request to the JFC. And that what we ask is that the JFC fully fund the school committee budget request of 3.985% or $1,554,954. And so with that, I will await your discussion and questions.
Thank you.
It's way better. Yeah. I've got texts from multiple people saying, this is, I can't hear, it's not echoing. So I think that was a big help.
So that microphone's been muted. Yes. And the only mic that's on probably right now is mine. Okay. So at this time, do any of the members of the JFC have any questions for Dr. Bryce? And Mr. Sweeney, I will go to you first.
Good evening, Dr. Bryce. I know we had a few questions in regards to the budget concerning specifically the insurance liability piece, and there was a little bit of an increase this year in that budget. So we were just trying to understand why there was an increase of that budget. Thank you.
Could you repeat that question, or maybe stand closer to a mic?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Dr. Bryce?
It went in and out.
Yeah, I can barely hear you. So.
Okay. Yeah. Dr. Bryce? A lot of echoing, right? Dr. Bryce, can you hear me? A little bit better?
Yeah, he can hear you.
That was better?
Well, ask the question.
Right. We'll just wait, yeah. Okay. Yep. Dr. Bryce, so I had a quick question in regards to the liability insurance. We know that it was increased a bit this year. I think it was $300,000 last year, and it's been increased to $600,000. Just trying to understand why there was an increase in that line item. We're just trying to have a better understanding of that item. So that's my first question. Thank you.
So, Dr. Bryce, before you respond, just allow us to get back our audio. Did you unmute? So, Dr. Bryce, you can respond now.
All right, what's the line item?
Put the mic closer to them. Was there a line item on the insurance budget?
So the question was that there was a line item that increased $600,000. Liability. Yeah. So our insurance coverage, it comes through the trust.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Dr. Bryce, I'm going to be the relay on this question from Mr. Sweeney. So the question was, in your budget, you have a $600,000 line item for the property liability insurance, but last year it was $300,000. So do you have a explanation for why the increase?
Yes, and so our insurance carrier provides us with what they believe is an estimate quote, and we put that in as a placeholder. I can tell you that last year, because we had significant injury claims that resulted in additional workman's comp claims, that we actually got hit both from a workman's comp perspective and from a liability insurance perspective.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer your question, Mr. Sweeney? Yes, thank you. Do you have any other questions for him? Tim, at this time? No? Thank you. I'll move to Mr. Contente. Do you have any questions for the superintendent?
I do. I have a question about the health and medical plans. My question is, Dr. Bryce, can you hear me? Is that an affirmative? Okay, so recently the town of Bristol got the final quotes for our health and medical insurance for the coming fiscal year. And we've also learned that the school district, since your February 10th budget that was presented to Bristol, you've also received your final insurance for medical and dental for your employees present and your retirees. We have information that the budget amount, which was a 14% increase over last year, is actually going to be a 10% increase, roughly. So I'm wondering if you can tell us, will there be any savings? I know the amount is approximately, I believe, over $4 million in insurance, so 5% of that is a significant amount of money. Could you tell us if you've learned of any savings since your budget was presented in insurance for medical and dental?
Yeah, so that's a great question. That, okay, that's better. All right. So we were notified by the trust, I believe, last week that they expect that our number or percentage for increase is not going to be 10 to 15%, but is actually going to come in right around 10%, like Mr. Contente mentioned. And so with that, considering that health insurance costs are considerable, there may be some savings. But here really is the issue. The issue is that we are still going to have to go into negotiations. We are still going to have to negotiate what our health insurance plan is going to be with our bargaining unit. And so I cannot, sit here and say that we will definitely have a level of savings because that is something that has to go through negotiations.
Do you have any other questions for him, Steve?
No. I just think it's important that the public knows that our budget with the town, we base our upcoming budget year on the projections that are given to us by our insurance carrier, not by what we think are going to come in with the negotiations. They're fixed costs. So I'm a little bit confused on how you're going to negotiate that. And while I have the floor, one other question: Do you have a contingency in your salary account now for your negotiations? Do you have funds set aside for your negotiations that are within this current budget that you proposed?
So we absolutely do have contingencies for potential salary increases that are included in the budget. They are a part of negotiations. They are things that our school committee will negotiate with our bargaining unit. And as a result, we needed to absolutely have a placeholder. But no decisions have been made. No dollars have been said that, you know what, we're going to give you this or we're going to give you that. It's all part of negotiations. We expected negotiations to begin about a week ago. And certainly with everything that we're dealing with, we know that negotiations will have to occur probably sometime late this spring, early this summer. And I think the other thing that Mr. Contente mentioned is that the town of Bristol bases their budget on what they get from their insurance carriers. Well, I would say that we base our budget on two things. Number one, it is projections of what we are expected to spend, either from providers that we know are we're gonna have those same providers the next year. But the other thing is we're going into a contract negotiation year. So there are some things that are already baked into our budget. So one of the things that is already baked into our budget are step increases. So because the step increases are already baked into our budget, we certainly incorporated those step increases in any potential budget ask that we provided to the town. But that in no way means that it's definitely going to occur. It means that it is something that we have to go to the table and we have to negotiate. So, maybe negotiating on the town side is a little different, but we're trying to negotiate a 3-year contract with our teachers union. It's not something that we've even begun, and so we have to account for every contingency.
Okay, I'm not so sure if I understand that way of thinking. If the insurance is going to go up 10%, you're budgeting 14%. You're going to pass that cost and split it between the district and the employee. I don't know how you're going to pass the 10% increase. I don't understand. I don't understand that. You have funding there, and actually doing the calculations, you have at least $340,000 in savings for medical and health, looking at the health in medical projections. So, yes, you are going to have an increase in medical, but it's no more than 10%. It's funded.
Wow.
It's funded for your negotiations.
So, again, what I would say to you is, so there are placeholders in our budget. The information that we provided was a placeholder. The fact that the trust gave us numbers last week that they gave to us that somehow you also have is interesting. The other thing I would say is that we still have to negotiate with our bargaining unit. We have not begun those negotiations, all right? And certainly that increase in expected healthcare costs is something that certainly I would expect that the bargaining unit is going to want to have a conversation with us about. So the fact that it goes up 10% doesn't mean that what the workers will actually get is just a 10% increase. They may actually have a higher increase.
Hey, thank you for your response.
Anything else, Steve? No. Nate, do you have anything for Dr. Bryce?
Hello, Dr. Bryce. 2 questions for you. One is about debt service. The second one is about free and reduced lunch. First one on the debt service. There's approximately $12 million, $11.9 million in principal debt right now. And those look like those are going through 2028 payments on those. When is the last time the school system looked at refunding those requirements, as principal and interest, for a lower interest rate? There's a potential savings. I know that town of Bristol just did this, actually does it all the time, but recently just did it with savings in the budget of about $60,000 a year on the ones that we were able to refund. If I apply that same kind of math, it would seem like there's a 75 to maybe up to 150. I wrote 175, but I don't want to go too high up. $75,000 to, let's say, $150,000 a year, and that would be for quite a few years savings. Can you tell us the last time that this is looked at? And if it hasn't been looked at in a while, what steps are you taking to take a look at it? And my second question, just because the audio is very difficult, I'll just keep going here. Free and reduced lunch. The participation went down by 128 students. My question is that what efforts are being made to educate those families about the benefit of them signing back up again? It's my understanding, and please help me with clarity on this, is that there were some steps made by the school. I believe they were extremely kind, but made it much easier for kids to get the free lunch without actually doing the paperwork. Again, I commend the kindness, but I believe that that the families are part of the success here. I said another way, without them signing up for it, we are losing hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I believe that the families may think that they're a burden on the system, and it's quite the opposite when they sign up and they're using these services and they're there to help kids and families. We're losing a lot. So what are we doing to capture that? I know that myself, I've only seen one email asking people to sign up for it, and that doesn't seem to be even close to the 400,000 we lost from the state commensurate to that. So if you could respond. Thank you.
So as it relates to food and nutrition, certainly the district did pass a new policy to ensure that no student would be turned away from being able to have a hot, nutritious lunch. It is certainly something that we would expect for every student. What is critical is that, almost like the census, it is educating all parents about the importance of filling out a free reduced meal application, whether they think they're going to qualify or not. We also, unfortunately, are living in a day and age where some families, and some of our families have even said this to social workers or others that have mentioned it, are fearful of completing forms because they think that somehow that information would get back to other agencies within the government, and there could be potentially adverse actions. So it is critically important that we make sure that, number one, we're educating parents that in no way is this information shared, and it would get to an agency that would attempt to put in place any type of enforcement actions. So I think that's number one. I think number two, we have reached out on an individual basis. There are, to my knowledge, there are two people in the school system that I actually know the individuals who are free and reduced price meals or are eligible. And that person is an individual that works in our district office who actually is working with families, contacts families, asks them if they have a bill or something like that, have they thought about other things. And then I have the ability to see that list, but can I just tell you that it is not something that typically we want other individuals to see because of privacy issues. And so what we try to do is universal implementation. We put signage, signage in places where people that may want to avail themselves have the opportunity to avail themselves. We send information and notices in all of our schools' newsletters, so principals have sent that out. And then in a one-on-one where our human services staff, social workers, psychologists, school counselors interact with families and see families in need, they provide information about free and reduced price meals. So that's really how we're trying to get it done. I think to your point about should there be additional information, I think, again, this is just like the census. We want to make sure that everyone fills it out, everyone completes it, and it's difficult to get everyone to do that. To your point about debt service and how much debt service we're carrying and whether or not we're looking, I think, number one, as everyone here recognizes, the town of Bristol was able to hire the budget director from the school system away. And it is not until we put a new budget director in place that we will entertain conversations about looking to refinance existing debt to see if that is an option. The other thing I would mention is that the district in the last, I think, 2 years actually paid off a significant amount of outstanding debt. And so we are looking at that. We're looking at all options to make sure that we can have a budget that meets the needs of our students. And as soon as we get additional staff on board, we'll take a look at that.
Thank you, Dr. Bryce. Aaron, can you hear me? Is Aaron Lay still on the call? Aaron, we're gonna come back to you. I'm gonna move to Kerry. Kerry, do you have any questions for the superintendent?
I do not at this time. The question I had was about enrollment in free and reduced lunch, and he adequately answered that. Thank you.
Ms. Perella, do you have any questions for the superintendent?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Just one. The issue that really came to light at your first presentation and what I've gotten asked or people have talked the most about to me was the 8-period schedule versus the 7. And I'm wondering, what your plans are to put that back, or what your thoughts are on that subject.
Dr. Bryce, just hang on a second. We'll get your audio up and running. You're up and running now, sir.
I'm sorry to put, I missed the question.
I said the comments that I've heard the most about since the last presentation related to the high school scheduling, the 8-period versus the 7-period day, and how disruptive that was to some of the students, especially those who wanted to pursue, I'm going to use the word advanced work, as well, the engineering program and things like that. And I was wondering what your thoughts are and plans are to go forward for next year.
So, all right, thank you. So it is even funding our budget, the idea to reinstitute a different schedule is not something that would be educationally feasible. When we eliminated the 8-period day, I believe that we also had to eliminate about 8 or 9 teachers. What Dr. DiBiase, the principal of the high school, and I have been talking about is this idea that she found when she was doing work, working on a grant application and visiting some schools in other states where there is the possibility that we might attempt to flex our schedule. If we could flex our schedule, then there may be 1 or 2 teachers that would start earlier during the day. There may be 1 or 2 teachers that would start later in the day, and we would run a course before school starts and a course after school starts. The reality is, right now, students have the ability to earn 28 credits if they just earn 7 credits per year, 4 years of high school, and you need 23 to graduate, so that gives you a buffer of 5. If you were to take a class before school or a class after school, that would give you 1 extra credit, and typically that might be for a class that really, what I would say, some students that have scheduling conflicts, because it's not every student that has it, but there are a group of students that have scheduling conflicts. Typically those conflicts result around the issue of whether or not they're in foreign language or world language, whether they're in band or chorus, and then they're also trying to take advanced placement courses. And so if we could have that flex in our schedule, and that would be something that we would, again, it's not something that we can do unilaterally. We actually have to have a conversation with our bargaining unit and get a memorandum of understanding, and then find teachers who would be willing to do that. If we could do that, that may be just enough of the pressure release that allows those students to take some classes that are easier classes that fit in their schedule, but are requirements, so that it leaves the other 7 periods for them to do the type of work that they actually want to do. So it's a great question. We certainly would love to be able to do it, but we just know that it's not educationally, in terms of personnel, or financially feasible.
One quick second, and that is, I just don't, do you currently give credits for things like the robotics program or anything like that they're doing after school?
Hello? Did you guys hear me?
Yeah? Oh,
Yes, we can hear you, Dr. Bryce.
Hello?
Yes, Dr. Bryce, we can hear you.
Okay.
I don't think he...
Go ahead, Mary. You can repeat your question.
Sorry, I'm not sure if you heard my question, and I'm just not sure, is do the students who participate in things like the robotics after-school club, do they currently get credits? Because I know that you would have the capacity to do that, am I right?
So if they are participating in a club,
That's as an example.
if it is a club, if it occurs after the normal school day, and is not part of the traditional curriculum, then they're participating in, but they're not actually earning a credit. Is it still valuable? Absolutely. But the real question becomes, how do we fit more credit-bearing courses into our 7-period day? And the only way that we think we can do that is to have that flex in the schedule, where there might be 1 or 2 courses in before school, 1 or 2 after school, and primarily those courses might be courses that would be, it wouldn't be in English, it wouldn't be like a core academic, but it might be other requirements that students would take, and they would take them before school, and then during school they would have the regular 7-period day to take all the other courses that fit into their schedule.
Can I ask a quick to add?
Yeah, I was just going to ask if Mary had anything else.
Oh, to add, just to kind of.
Okay.
To try to get credits at high schools for things that are occurring before or after school, like the robotics program, things like that. I'm not sure where that all stands right now in the state, but that's what I was thinking about. I mean, even if it's like a quarter credit or something else, because those kids are doing as much work as they do during their classes, like a STEM lab or whatever. So that's what I was wondering. That's what I was thinking about. And as I said, I'm just not up to date on it. There was a lot of, as I said, there's a lot of grant opportunities and money in the last, like, say, 5 years to look at that.
So, Tamara, did you have a...
Oh, no, I was just going to say that I was going to then sort of ask if we are unable to then fully fund the budget, can we do any of that? So if we're not able to fully fund this budget, will we be able to have robotics clubs, and will we be able to have like flex learning time?
Yeah, and you...
Well, money, as an example.
Yeah.
I mean, using that one as an example. I don't know that they get much. I don't know if they get money from the district or not.
So the one thing you got to remember, as the JFC, we don't get an opportunity, or are we able to dictate how the school spends the money?
I'm not asking. I'm asking that if the budget is not fully funded, will we be able to have that flexibility in the schedule that Mary had asked the question to Dr. Bryce? So I'm asking Dr. Bryce if we would be able to have that.
Hang on one second. Dr. Bryce, did you...
I'm sorry.
Dr. Bryce, did you get that? Hang on one second. I'm just trying to get my mic up. Yeah.
Jonathan, I think your question.
So, Dr. Bryce, the question was, if the budget's not fully funded, would we still have an opportunity to do robotics? And we're just using that as an example, or the flex schedule.
Yeah, so I think if the budget's not fully funded, I've been very clear about my priorities. And so I think, number one, we look at those things that are not part of the core instructional program, and extracurriculars would exactly be that. We look at any programming that needs to go, any vacancies, and then we start having conversations about staff. But again, I think it is certainly my hope that there will be a willingness on the part of the JFC to understand that the things that makes, I'm an old high school social studies teacher, so I would love for children to love to go to school to learn about history and to learn about math and science and English. And some of our kids do. But the reality is some kids go to school and the thing that connects them and the thing that hooks them and causes them to go to school and to engage and do well is because of those extracurricular activities. I would hate for our young people to not have the opportunity to fully participate in those extracurriculars, to find their passion, to find their skills, or to develop their skills. And so, unfortunately, it is something that we have to look at. Our athletic budget is about $600,000 a year. And so I think it is clear that we need to start looking at those things if we are not going to get funded in a way that allows us to operate.
Thank you, Dr. Bryce. Tony, I'm just going to go to Aaron Lay right now because he's up, and I'm going to try and hang on one second. So, Aaron, can you hear me?
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Dr. Bryce, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Okay. The question I have for you, and you might want to repeat the question for the others in case they don't hear me as well. But I was just kind of curious as to, I can't really, it's very difficult to separate everything that we have going on with the COVID-19 thing that's going on as well. And so one of the things that I wanted to ask you about was, are there any unanticipated expenditures that you think that there might be during this budget year should this COVID-19 continue to go on through the end of the school year and maybe even possibly into August? I'll mute my microphone.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And all the questions really have been really good. So let me tell you what there are starting to be questions about. So the question is, are there any unintended costs that we may occur as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic? And here's one that I think everyone should think about. If the situation continues and school potentially does not come back in April, but maybe comes back in mid-May or comes back the 1st of June, would the state of Rhode Island require school to be in session over the summer, which is not something that has been discussed, but I do think I would be remiss if I didn't say that I do think that in some discussions, people are going to start asking the question, do you need to come to school over the summer? If that were to happen, I think that would be the type of unintended consequence that we are clearly not prepared for, that we don't have those funds in our budget, and that would be something that we absolutely would need not just local funding for, but we would need state funding for that. Our distance learning program really is going very well, but we're only in day 3. It is certainly our hope that the state will waive the 180-day rule and allow the distance learning to take its place, which I do believe that they will for the first 10 days. If we go beyond that, then we have to have that type of discussion at the state level. But that would be the one thing that I would think right now might be an issue. The other issue might be if they needed to use our buildings, if the state or localities needed to use our buildings, that there may be a cost to that. But I think those are really the two things that I can think about.
All right. How about technology? It would seem that, certainly
we see it happening in higher education where I'm at right now. The other thing is having to actually train teachers for distance learning and best practices and everything like that requires professional development. But there also seems that there might be some sort of impact on the technology that these students would use. They're probably using it a lot more than they ever did before. You might have to replenish your stock of technology at some point. I don't know if there's anything else like that that's certainly that you can speak about.
Yeah, so we actually don't know what the ramifications are for distance learning in terms of technology infrastructure. What I can tell you is that before COVID-19, we actually had approximately 800, maybe a little more, Chromebooks and iPads at the elementary level. Thus far, we've given out about 530 of them. We expect to give out another 100 of them to the people that have asked, but we also need to hold some in reserve in case we have ones that break. I think the real question for us is once this is over, once we get those Chromebooks and iPads back, and then we run the diagnostics, will we need to replace a few more than we have planned? We certainly think that we will, but we don't know if it will require a wholesale investment. The other thing I would add to that particular situation is that technology is meant to be used, and the fact that our elementary students are now using it does beg the question about whether or not they should have take-home devices, and so that will be something that we need to look at and discuss and decide moving forward.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have for now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're very welcome, Aaron. Dr. Bryce, I just want to follow up real quick because I'm not seeing any of that coming out of the governor's office. Are you trying to tell us that the distance learning won't count as a school day and they could end up having to go back to school further into the summer?
No, I was just actually answering the question. What I can tell you and tell everyone that's watching is that we certainly know that these first 10 days certainly will count for part of the 180 school days. Anything after that requires governmental action on the part of the legislature, I believe, to waive the 180-day requirement. It's not something that the commissioner has the statutory authority to do. So that is why I answered the question in the way that I did. Certainly, we believe that this distance learning grand experiment is something that is showing positive results, and hopefully, if we are required to continue, that actually solves the problem of the 180-day rules for the remainder of the year. But it's not done yet. So I guess I'm hedging my bet and saying that might be one of the few things that I can think if they were to say we're going to go to school over the summer. No one has said that. The governor hasn't said that, but I do know that the commissioner, when she spoke to all the superintendents, relayed that her statutory authority does not allow her to extend beyond these first 2 weeks of distance learning. So the governor, the legislature are going to have to make that decision.
All right, thank you. So for the sake of clarity, yeah, we're still exploring that. It's these days are going to count. Okay, thank you. I'm going to move to Tony Texera now. Do you have a question for the superintendent?
Yes, I do. Dr. Bryce, based on the questions that have been asked by my colleagues about the medical savings, salary reserve, and rebonding, is it possible that there will be significant savings on this budget that could be passed on to the, or reduce, I should say, the request from the school?
Did he not get it? Dr. Bryce, did you get
I did not.
Mr. Texero's question? Can you try one more time, please, Tony?
Yes. Dr. Bryce, can you hear me now? Okay. So based on the questions from my colleagues about the medical savings, salary reserve, and rebonding, is it possible to have some savings or generate some
Tony, stop.
savings?
Did you lose him again, Dr. Bryce?
All right.
Dr. Bryce, I believe the question was regarding
Brian Bradshaw.
surrounding medical reserve and rebonding. Are there potential savings
It's fine.
that can be passed on this year?
That is correct, Dr. Bryce. That's the question. That's the correct question, Dr. Bryce.
Right, medical bonding and reserves. So I think first and foremost, we need to get staff in place to have the conversation about whether or not we're going to be able to refinance outstanding debt. So we certainly aren't going to do that until we've got the budget director in place. I think in terms of staff, in terms of reserves, we certainly want to be as conservative with the use of reserves as possible. One thing that has not been mentioned, but I'm going to mention it now, is the question of, with the delay in tax revenue, the federal government pushed their deadline back to July 15th. The state's revenue, the state's tax deadline is now also the 15th. With that moving out the date, whether or not moving out the date for the collection of taxes will also move up the date for the state and localities to provide their funding to school districts. So if that is the case, one of the questions that we have to now answer is whether or not we are going to have to use fund balance to pay, to make payroll for those first, maybe the first or second payroll in September. And so those are things that we are now thinking about and asking questions when we're on the phone with the commissioner and with other folks. It is something that superintendents all around the state are clearly concerned about.
Do you have another question for him, Tony? Thank you. Tamara, the floor is yours.
Sure. I have one question. Can you hear me?
All right, I don't have mic again. Hold on, let me go to this stuff.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
He's got you. Thank you.
All right. So I am curious if you have, you and your staff have done a forecast to see, if you've done a forecast to see where we're going to end this year, and especially within this moment in time, if you are going to see a surplus or a deficit come the end of the fiscal. That's my question.
Dr. Bryce, did you get her question or no?
So I got a question. So we certainly are very, very optimistic that we will end the year with a minor surplus, right? And so what does that look like? It looks like it's going to be 100,000 or 200,000. Certainly not anything. We're certainly not going to end with anything beyond that. Right now, we are still making payroll. We are still paying bills that are coming in, and so we have not noticed an appreciable savings due to that first week, which was vacation, and now this week, which is distance learning. Our goal, as always, would be to end with a minor surplus, and then by school committee policy, any remaining funds from this current year would then be placed into the school committee has to make the decision, but those funds would be allocated to fund balance for capital construction projects.
So this is then my question for that, and maybe that's also a school committee question, because when I was reading the enabling legislation, I noticed that if there is a surplus, it reallocates and remains within the regional school district account and does not say anything about capital. So I'm just curious if that is something that the school department, that's a charter or whatever they call it, a bill that the school department put forth. And so, yeah, that is my question.
Did you hear her follow-up, Dr. Bryce?
Yeah. So it's a policy of the school committee to actually review once the audit at the end of the year is completed. The school committee then makes that determination as to what they're going to do with those funds, and by policy, the school committee has made a decision that they will place those funds into the fund balance capital construction to be able to fund those projects for the upkeep. And really, it's more than the upkeep, the new construction requirements that the district has implemented.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Mr. Contente. Dr. Bryce, give me 1 second, Steve. Dr. Bryce, Mr. Contente has a follow-up question for you. Go ahead, Steve.
First off, well done with the distance learning. I know it was a little shaky, just like this meeting, to get off and going, but I think it's working, and thank you for that. And as I said at the last JFC meeting, I give a lot of credit to the teachers and the principals that I know are in the school. I personally saw at least two of your principals in the schools over the weekend, so I know they're out there in the community, and I do appreciate that they're vested in our success and our children's success. So thank you. If your leadership has something to do with that, I give you credit. Thank you. I did send these questions to you. I don't want anyone to think I'm asking you these questions flat-footed, but I understand you are busy under the circumstances, so I didn't expect an answer back, but it was last Wednesday when I did send these. And they're important for me to know because there's a lot of weight here on raising taxes to take care of one of our most important aspects of government. So I have to ask these questions so that I can answer to the best of my ability when I'm asked. My next question is your tuition to private sources, your line for tuition to private sources. And at this point, I'm also going to get back to your question to me about where I found that information on insurance. We share an insurance carrier. It's Rhode Island Interlocal Trust. So that is public information. You didn't get me the information, so I did get it myself. So I think that's being a prudent elected official. And also your other question or statement about not the lack of a finance director, you did hire a chief operations officer, and all you need to do is get bond counsel. We occasionally refund our bonds with the town of Bristol. That's all done through a bond counsel. It's not the finance director. So I implore you to get a hold of a bond counsel. I can actually recommend a few names if need be. Let's see if we can save some money for the taxpayers. So back to my question, tuition to private sources. Over the last 3 or 4 years, there's been modest increases. 2 years, you've had decreases. You have an increase this year of $375,700. Could you explain why? Do you know at this point that you have $375,700 worth of outside tuition? Could you explain why?
Did you get his question, Dr. Bryce? Did you get his question, Dr. Bryce?
Yeah, so Steve, I think a couple of things. One, so I thought your question was, can I explain why we have an increase in cost with out-of-district tuition? Because that's what it is. And so this is exactly what I explained at the first JFC meeting, and I will explain it again. If a person is suffering from a heart condition and goes to the emergency room is going to try to make sure that they stabilize the patient and treat the patient. Public schools are in the exact same situation. Any student that comes into a public school, regardless of whatever special educational need that they have, public schools are required to do our level best to provide that service. For the majority of students, we provide that service in school. There are, however, some students whose level of disability exceeds our ability to provide them instruction and the therapeutic supports that they need. And as a result, we have to find an out-of-district placement. That out-of-district placement oftentimes can range anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 per year, plus transportation. That is not something that we take lightly. We look at every situation that occurs, but I don't think that the average citizen understands that we are obligated, not only legally, but also ethically and morally, to educate all students. And maybe 40 or 50 years ago, the level of requirement and support for all students is not the same. It was not the same then as it is now. And unfortunately, in many years past, what they did was they failed to educate kids. So because of a number of lawsuits, because of a bunch of federal action, all public schools are required to provide educational services to all students, regardless of their disability, until the age of 21. And so if you see that number going up, it is because we've got kids that have shown up on our doorstep. We have worked with them, and we have had to make the very costly decision that we need to put them in an external placement. It is not something we do lightly, but it is absolutely something that we are required to do. The other thing I would mention is, Steve, thanks for mentioning the bond council. I think one of the things that we've been talking about at the school system is finding ways to work more collaboratively with both towns, and whether it be Bristol Warren and this, Bristol on this, or Warren with some refuse matters at KMS and Bucole. We are certainly interested in doing that. And again, to your point about where you got the information, certainly the information is public information. I don't have a problem with that, but I need you to understand that in the last 10 days, we've been singularly focused on distance learning so that our kids would have something on this day. So just thank you for your consideration.
You can ask. I'm just curious as to the 375, to follow up on Steve's point. I understand the mandates and so forth. Is the 375 an actual number that you hit this year because one or two additional children that are expensive, require expensive care came into the district? Or is this something you're anticipating and is like a cushion for next year? Like, I'm trying to figure out that number, like why the increase of 375, 700? Okay, should I ask that again? Did you hear?
Did you get that, Dr. Bryce?
It's actually not a cushion. We're probably about 700,000 over where the projection was from last year. So it's not a projection. And here's the other thing: once you have a student that goes in, it is very, very difficult to get that student to come out, because it's not a decision that we can make unilaterally. It is a decision that the parent has to approve. And typically, if we've gone through the multiple steps within the district to provide support, often in the regular classroom, then in a more self-contained classroom, to providing additional support with therapists and other folks, to finally having the conversation, having the IEP meeting with moms and dads and grandmoms and granddads in some cases, and then getting everyone to agree that an external placement is the right thing. Once you do it for 1 year, you're pretty much signing up to do that for a number of years, unless the student's condition changes. And typically, the student's condition does not change. The underlying issue does not change. Most of the reasons why we're sending students to out-of-district placements are for cognitive and physical disabilities that we do not have the staff and the equipment and the rooms to be able to educate. And in the instance of 1 or 2 students, it actually might be more cost effective to send them out, but it is very expensive and not something that we're padding, something that we're dealing with in real time right now.
Thank you, Dr. Bryce. Do you have any other follow-ups, Steve?
Just to be clear, I think Dr. Bryce stated that the $375,700 increase, last year you had $1,424,000 budgeted, so it's a significant increase, but he's stating that it was not just placeholders. That's not a placeholder, that is, you actually have students in mind for next year that will be going into another institution, another school. That's how I understand. It was a very good explanation of what it was, but from what I understand, that money will be spent.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that we have students in mind. I would say that we actually have students this year that we have placed in out-of-district placements, and as a result, we have added that to the budget projection for next year. So that's why you're seeing it. It's not a placeholder. Those are actual students that we are now educating external.
Okay, that answered the question. Thank you.
Nate, do you have anything else? Tim? Nothing at this time? Nope. Tony? Mary? Carrie? Let me turn my mic on and see how Aaron's doing. Aaron, do you have any questions to follow up with Dr. Bryce? Nope. He's indicated that he's good to go. Perfect. At this time, to continue with the meeting, I'm going to go to some of the questions I was presented with by the general public that I got several emails. And the first one I'm going to identify as a sophomore from Mount Hope High School. And her email was quite lengthy, but her question is presented at the end of the email, and it's for the members of the JFC. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you could just bear with me, please. Hello, I'd like to voice my entire opinion to you all before the meeting tomorrow to assure that every last word I have to say on my community's behalf is heard. Thank you, and I hope you can understand the depth of what I have to say and the extreme role you have in prioritizing education. Hello all. I feel as if whatever I may be about to write will not be heard by those who it is presented to, but I've been taught that my opinion is worth value and acknowledgement. So here I go, and I promise in the end it is a question. When it comes to the educational budget crisis we face in Bristol and Warren, I feel as if a lot of people turn to the Performing Arts Department as the first Band-Aid to the major wound. This is because you still let stereotypes fuel your opinion, thus letting students' passion mean nothing to you. After all, you are here to control our education, correct? As a committed member of the band, I know how attached some of us get to this program. When you walk into the band room, greeted by the smiling Mr. Lambert, it is a worry-free environment where we can finally ease our minds off of the anxiety in our heads and to put into the notes on our papers, band, as much as many of activities the community wants to defund, is a way to cope. Whether it be for plain fun, to be with your friends, or maybe music, even your future, it's essential. The same goes for athletics and art. As a community, if you cannot act to support the well-being of our students, then how do you expect us to make a strong future for the years after you are no longer here? Another safety net that absolutely boggles my mind is decreasing in staffing and impeding of staff contract negotiations. What is school without teachers? We cannot be the key to your future without strong leaders to pave the way for us, not to mention by cutting funding to another teacher who has to work extra hard due to inadequate staff. What you do not realize is that the actions you take every single year to turn down our students to greed creates a rippling effect to not only our students but to teachers, administrators, and the many helping hands within our school system. So I then must ask you, and here's where the question comes. Why do you do it? I kindly ask you to prioritize education before greed. Thank you. I Mount Hope High School Junior. So after I read that email and I had to decipher some of the information in it, I guess the question presented to the JFC is, are we actually prioritizing the budget, or are we putting our resources to something else? I'm not going to say whether or not greed was an appropriate adjective to use, but I'm not here to chastise a student who wanted to put her opinion forward. So, Mr. Sweeney, I'm sorry. I don't know if you have a response, or you're going to allow me to take the lead on this.
You're welcome to take the lead unless you want a motion.
Yeah.
That answers this question.
No. It's just part of the discussion. So.
No, I think we do prioritize education. And we know that the town is built on a community. We understand these kids matter, and I think every colleague here in this room puts education number one. And I'm looking forward to taking tonight's vote.
Thank you. And before I move on, I just want to be perfectly clear to the public that is watching. I made it known that if any individual in the community had a question before the JFC, they could email me prior to tonight's meeting. And we had put a sunset date of 6 p.m., but I was receiving them after, and I took every question that I was able to get, then I will present to the JFC. So this is why I'm doing this format. Mr. Contente, did you have a response?
Yeah. First, I think it's great that we did get the letter from one of our students. Civic engagement is very important, so I do appreciate that, and I appreciate their interest in school. But I have to set the record straight on funding. The JFC has increased funding every year since I have paperwork here since 2017 fiscal year. Local aid to education was $34,400,000. We're up now. Last year we were $38,430,000. So every year we are increasing significantly. The taxpayers of Bristol and Warren are increasing their contributions significantly. Taxes are going up every year. We are doing our part. Conversely, I'm looking at state aid for education. It went from $15,879,000 to last year's $14,510,000. There's the underlying problem. You know, we are in the communities, we're in the schools, we're in the supermarket, we're on the ball fields. We're engaged. We're engaged. I don't know where our state leadership is. That's the problem. And every year we go here, we give more money, and we try to do the very best we can to educate our kids with money, the little money that we have. So, I think we are doing our part. We're doing it to the best of our ability, and it weighs heavy on all of us. So I just need to set the record straight that every year we have increased the budget significantly on local education funding. It's the state funding that's being reduced every year. Just one more, and I'll end.
Joe still. Yep.
This is the last year of the state funding formula, and I'm hopeful next year we'll be in a different place. I'm hopeful that we get through this with the funding that will supply the school department with the needed funds that they need, and we can get through this next year. So that's the hope, and I'm looking forward to the conclusion of this meeting.
Thank you.
Just wanted to comment on Administrator Contente's statement. He's so right in regards to we've been making up for an $8 million loss over the last 10 years, right? Phasing out. So we've been increasing, but we've had to make up for that loss. Unfortunately, they lived on a bonus that was never supposed to be in their operating budget, right? That should have been put away in a savings account where they lived, they used it appropriately. That was not the fact. So we've been trying to make up for that for the last 10 years. This is the final year of that. So we finally have a way where we're moving forward and we can better forecast our budget moving forward. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. Mr. Calero, do you have anything?
I think the administrator captured it well in regards to increase in financing. I understand, I think we all do, the point behind the question, suggesting that they feel it should be more. And it always comes down to balance, and we've had this conversation every year, and we hear the retort to that we need to prioritize, and in fact we do. I know that there's always a want for more, and I think we all sit here wanting to give more too. I don't think that's ever been a question. Currently our budget in Bristol represents more than 50% solely for contributing to the school right now. Well, it's 50, we pay 62, our municipal portion, I want to say it's about 52% of what we collect for taxes, so the priorities are certainly there. And we've heard at our JFC meeting of last, and then tonight you can hear the inference of the concerns, and I agree with them. I have 2 kids in the school. My wife and I have 2 kids in the school. And by the way, hats off to the teachers. Outstanding job with the distance learning. It's tremendous what happened in such a short amount of time. But back to the response, I think that the focus is there, has been there. Tim brought up about the lack of state. So did Steve Contenti. And I believe that is just spot on. We, the towns, both towns, have been continuing to contribute while the state is taking those funds away. We've made excellent decisions on a municipal level. The school has been dealing with the lack of those funds. It is the last year of this. And hoping, I bring up these questions as my colleagues did, like refunding bonds, getting more in free and reduced lunch signups. I don't think that'll change the budget for today, but I know it will change in the future. So my colleagues and I, and I'll speak for everyone in this one, we definitely focus on prioritizing education, and we've done that with the funding. It may not be as much as some would want, but it has certainly been our priority by fact. Thank you.
Carrie, do you have anything else to add?
Well, if we are at that point in the meeting where we're making our statements, I don't know if you have the intention of reading more questions.
I do. The questions that I received, I responded back, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And are they questions that...
Some of them pertain to the JFC that actually pertain, and then there's 1 or 2 that may pertain to the superintendent.
Okay, but they are not questions that have maybe already been answered through the conversation.
No, and if they have, I won't ask them. Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
You know, I know for myself personally, yes. I think what my core value is that education is the utmost importance. It's what we can give to our students and to our children, and it is a vehicle for them to be successful. I feel like education is a priority of mine. I feel like the overwhelming and resounding feedback, though, from the community is that it is not. I know that sitting in our seats, we are looking at numbers and the reality of making budgets work and not going over a 4% cap that we are legally bound to stay under. And so it's a real juggling of money and time to make it work. I think that we have been trying to fund education in a way for a very long time that just doesn't work any longer. I think we've been working off of a document here, this enabling legislation that's almost 30 years old, and we've never once reviewed it. There was never any language in this document that would require annual 5-year, 10-year review. I know that our charter requires review periodically. Our Harbor Commission plan requires regular review, but this document doesn't, and it is probably the most important document that we really are obligated to fulfill, and it boggles me that we've been working off of this and running our heads into the same wall every year, wondering why we keep on having these discussions. So, while yes, the state aid and the funding formula is coming to an end, and who knows what the next year will bring, but I know that the next year, if we don't review this and if we don't make some changes and take our legislators and our each other by the hand and vow to change some things, we're going to be sitting right back here again next year and having these same conversations. And I do hear the public saying, we don't think you are giving enough to education. And I hear it from students, I hear it from parents, I hear it from teachers. So I'm listening, and I think we need to push a little harder and a little further to respond to them and their needs.
Thank you. Mary, do you have anything that you wanted to add?
In fact, here's my email response to the same letter.
Okay.
And that I did last night. I don't think I caught up to everyone because it's been a little busy where I work at a school district as well. I generally agree with Steve and with Nathan on the comments. We've always given money. I'll just take a minute to read this.
The floor is yours.
Also,
the floor is yours. Yes.
But I also just wanted to say one point, and that is in some of the letters, especially after the first meeting, I have urged people to take their advocacy to the State House. A lot, and I've said it here at this meeting in past years as well. We cannot solve all this problem of the budget for the schools. It needs to be addressed. The funding formula needs to be addressed, and needs to make sure that not only the regional districts, but all the suburban districts and everybody gets treated fairly. And no one seems to take that bull by the horns and do it. Like, there's a great advocacy when this meeting pops up, and like there was a postcard campaign. I don't know if you got those postcards today. I only got a couple of them that somebody dropped off. I mean, they need to take some of this energy and channel it into our legislators and try to make some change there. That's the ultimate solution. Going through this every single year is not the long-term solution for this. It just isn't. But I will take a minute or two because, and just read you my comments, and this is generally my thoughts on the whole situation. Thank you for your comment. As a member of the Bristol Town Council, I can assure you that we always do what is best for the community as a whole. I am sure you are aware that there are many competing needs in a community. It's a delicate balancing act. The proposed budget is getting more and more difficult to balance every day with the coronavirus. We will have sufficiently less revenue, coupled with people who are laid off and many be holding on to their homes by a thread. My colleagues and I have always given the schools an increase, but it may be less than requested, but certainly not a cut from the prior year. Usually the increase is $500,000 or more just from Bristol. I would like to clarify one point in your email. You talked about why we would cut band, performing arts, eliminate teachers, all important parts of the student's education. This is a really great point that is often misunderstood. Under Rhode Island state law, a city or town council, or in this case the JFC, can only present a bottom line figure. We cannot mandate how the money is spent. Under the law, that is the decision of the local school committee. We can only make suggestions. For example, if we were to provide funding to restore the 8-period schedule, there is no guarantee that it would be done. Once the budget is finalized, I suggest you advocate to the school committee on how they will set the priorities with the increased funding that they have. I am not trying to avoid your question, but the state law is clear that our role is only to determine the bottom line. I can also assure you that none of the decisions are based on greed, but the need to make sure that we maintain the critical services such as police, fire, road repair, etc., and that people of all income levels can continue to live in Bristol. I understand your position and really appreciate your advocacy. Keep up the good work. That was my response to that, and that's my response to a similar response, but hers was a little more detailed question than a couple of the other emails. I basically sent a much shorter version of this to another student or two.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Tony, anything? I'll go to you first, yeah, because Aaron's on a little bit of a delay.
Well, as my colleague Mary Burrell already...
Siri. Tony, the floor is yours.
No, but interesting enough, I did receive that email, as many others, and I made every effort to respond to every single one of those up until last night. Anyone received today, it was just out of my ballpark with everything else going on. But I think it needs to be very clear, and Mary already touched up on that, is the fact that we approve a budget, but what happens in terms of curriculum and course offerings, that's really up to the administration and the school committee. That's really not our call. As you pointed out, we provide the bottom line as to what happens next. The students and the parents need to go to the school committee to advocate for their cause. And the other point is, I've had 6 children that went through first of all, I was an educator in the system for 31 years. Second, I had 6 children that went through the same system that we currently have. I have 3 grandchildren that are currently there, and so does education matter to me? You bet it does. It's very close to my heart, but it's a balance that we have to strike. Once we wear the shoes that we wear, and as somebody pointed out, there's a greater cause. One of those students pointed out there's a greater cause. I believe in that very firmly. But the greater cause is not me, it's not none of us, but the community at large, including the schools as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Tamara, do you have anything?
Sure. I think that I first just wanted to thank the young people who wrote, and then also thank them for getting up at the mic our first meeting. Youth voice is really important in the world and in this conversation in general. I think yes, I agree. I think we got, sorry for lack of better words, screwed through the funding formula for the state. I think you have No Child Left Behind, Deborah Gist. I think you have these things that we're now dealing with for 10 years. But I think the idea was that the towns would be able to pick up that lapse, and so now we're at year 9, and the state aid decreased 9 years ago, and we're still having the same conversation. So I think my thing when I come and I sit here and sitting and talking to folks is that the transparency, I think, that is our government and how things move within. People also don't, I don't know a huge amount about it, and I'm learning, but it is it's an education process, and I think that if we were super transparent about how we go about having conversations and having conversation with the community and how we're and listening and in saying, okay, so here's where this is and how we do it and how do we read a P&L, how do we read a balance sheet? Like, here are things that are actually kind of important, and in civics education is also very important. And to Carrie's point, I think that creating some sort of committee to look at the enabling legislation going forward, I think is a really important thing, because I also think that we live in a world of institutional, we can call it institutional racism, where all this has been written. I mean, it's 30 years. 30 years ago, this was written, and we have never come and looked at it. People don't know. I didn't even know where to find it. You know, so I'm saying, like, here's our moment. Like, whether we are, whatever comes out of it, this is a moment. This is a moment in time. We're in a moment where it's a pandemic. You know, people are nervous. Take this moment to be transparent and take this moment to thank, I guess, you know, the young people who are voicing their opinions, and let's kind of figure out how we can move forward, because I'm all about that. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Aaron, do you have anything else that you'd like to add on this question?
Steve, is it my turn?
I'm just.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat that,
Dr.
please?
Bryce, can you shake your head? It's my turn. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I just wanted to make sure. So I'll just talk about this a little bit from my perspective as somebody who's in higher education. I've always felt that education is probably one of the most important investments that you can make. I think that the money that we put into education comes back to us through economic development later on. I think that there's businesses that want to move to a place like Bristol if they know that the education is good. I know that if we have good education over here, families are going to move in, and those families are going to be the ones that are shopping downtown and keeping some of our downtown merchants open. So there's economic development. There's equal opportunities. Public education allowed somebody like me, I grew up in the home of a single mother. It allowed me to go off and get my PhD, go get a doctorate, be the first one in my family to get a 4-year degree. And so it really levels that playing field and gives everybody an opportunity. But now what we've had here is we've had a superintendent that's come in here and he's given a fresh look to the school. And I think that he's put together a pretty good plan. And the thing that I like about the plan is that it aligns with the governor's economic development plan. So one of the things that he talks about in his plan are providing certain pathways to cybersecurity and creating home building opportunities. I had a chance, I worked with the governor's, I had an opportunity to actually review over a course of a year her Real Jobs Rhode Island program. So I had a chance to sit down with home builders and the Rhode Island Home Builders Association and the cybersecurity networks. And they were chomping at the bit for people to work in those types of industries. And the fact that he's going to be putting is absolutely a recession. And I'm looking forward to working with all of you on this vote tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. So to continue with some of the questions that we were presented with, I did receive another email from a Mount Hope High School, I believe it was a junior, and basically I'm going to condense her email into the question. College admission is greatly dependent on extracurriculars in addition to academics, and these extracurriculars need to be supported. So her question is, if athletics and the arts go away, how would they have an opportunity to obtain scholarships if athletics and arts are not funded? So actually, Dr. Bryce, this is probably a question for yourself. The email and the question I got was pertaining to if athletics and the arts programs are cut, because that's part of the discussion, how would these students still have an opportunity to compete with their counterparts when applying for, college acceptance?
As a former high school social studies teacher, citizenry. Certainly, we're not talking about ending, extracurricular, but I do think we will have to look at all of the or have as many of the different programs just talking about. That I do think that in the question where to go to the state, should you go to the town? So does the state need to increase? Do they need to increase the amount of money that they're giving? Absolutely. Does the school system need to use that money in a way that is for? And I think that's what we've attempted to do. And so what I would say to the young person is that, number one, the reduction in programming or extracurriculars is not going to prevent them from being able to be well-rounded, to be able just a little bit more so that we can have the type of education in public schools that we would hope to have.
Thank you, Dr. Bryce.
Thank you, Dr. Bryce.
So I have another question that came before us, and it focuses on the band. So the question is this. Can each of you provide a perspective on how you will react when future Bristol 4th of July parades step off each year with a group of 200 silent students following a banner which reads, Bristol Warren Regional School District Marching Band, we should march in silence because education is not a priority to our elected officials? I'm not sure if you heard that or not, Dr. Bryce. Dr. Bryce, were you able to hear the question I presented? Is he muted? He's toggling back and forth.
Sorry. All right, so yeah, something about young people wanting to march.
No, the band.
To demonstrate that they don't believe elected officials are focusing on education as much as they should. Is that the gist of the question?
Yes, correct.
Well, so let me just back to the high school social studies teacher. I think as a high school social studies teacher, clearly what we want for young people is to be actively engaged. If that is what they want to do because they are actively engaged, it is not something that I would think is probably the first step. But we certainly want the young people to understand that there are ways for redress of grievances, and that is something that we teach in our social studies curriculum. It is critically important that the adults, it's more than just saying we support education. If we support education, that means that there are times where we have to make difficult decisions. And sometimes those difficult decisions are about doing things that will cause people to maybe disagree with what we're doing, right? If the issue is we want an educated workforce, we want an educated citizenry, we want young people to grow up and to get a good education, get a good job, and then return and buy homes, purchase homes, and raise their families here and add to the fabric of the community, then one of the key attributes is having a top-flight, high-quality public education system. The fact that property values may increase in Bristol and Warren because we're close to the water should not be something that causes us to not realize the importance of having a quality educational system. And I am telling you as the brand new superintendent of schools, and I understand that, you know what, I haven't lived in the community for 20 years, and I wasn't born there, and I wasn't raised there. I understand that. But I would also tell you that enough real estate agents, and I've worked in enough places where the quality of the public schools matters, and we are approaching a point where we are not going to be able to have the quality of public education that we all expect for our young people without adding some additional dollars. So if young people want to protest that and do it peacefully, I would not be someone that would say they can't do it. I would hope that they would get the necessary permit, talk to the police, get the permit, and then if that's what they want to do, that is certainly something that they should have the right to do.
Thank you, Dr. Bryce. So I have just another quick question.
Was that question for us?
No, that was more for the district. I mean, you can have it. If you, I will take your.
I was just wondering if you guys had any thoughts.
Yeah, if you have a comment, that's fine.
I don't have a comment.
Okay.
I just
Yeah. Dr. Bryce, another question came in to me, and this could be for also the JFC, but you may want to weigh in. How will all the district staff fulfill the goal to be top 5 and 5 if the budget is not fully funded?
So hopefully everyone can hear me. So let me just tell you, and this is what I said yesterday to all the staff in the district. I have always, from the moment I walked in, been very proud of the staff that we had. They are knowledgeable. They care about children. They really are doing their very best. What I've seen over these last 10 days has that they have really taken it to another level. They have embraced the level of dysfunction that our current, situation has wrought. One of the things that I mentioned is that a month ago, the idea that we would be teaching all of our students from a distance is not something that anyone could have ever imagined. If someone had said it, people would have said it would never happen. It can't happen. But it has happened, and they've risen to the occasion. Do I expect that they are going to rise to the occasion, continue to rise to the occasion this year and next year? Absolutely. But can I also mention that when teachers don't have the tools that they need, when teachers have to scramble to get needed supplies, when they don't have the technology that would help them not just to teach when students are physically in front of them, but also at a distance when we don't have the resources to add the type of programming that is necessary to help students be ready to participate in a 21st century economy. That takes a toll. That hurts morale. That causes teachers to feel undervalued, and that's not something that we want. And so what I would just hope is that I would hope that the JFC recognizes that our staff is the most valuable resource that we actually have within the district, all right? And that they are the ones that are working with our young people every single day, helping our young people to grow and to reach their full potential. I hope that you are willing to invest not just in our staff, but also in our young people and fully fund the budget.
Thank you, Dr. Bryce. And I just have one more email question statement that I was requested to read into the record, so if my colleagues would just bear with me. To the JFC, while I admire Dr. Bryce's ambition regarding being a top 5 district in 5 years, I still have unanswered questions regarding what that really means and what criteria is being used, as he has stated that state assessments and rate do not provide measurement of a good district. I find his previous answer to this question to be woefully insufficient. Given the financial crisis that we are all facing at personal business and the municipal level, it is irresponsible for the Joint Finance Committee to commit the requested budget by Dr. Bryce. I am of the opinion that we should take the next year to define his goals and agree they are a path we want to take. We should also perform a forensic audit and get visibility into the financial health of the district. We can take the next year to evaluate the fallout from the coronavirus pandemic and put a plan forth that operates with an understanding of this new reality. I fully support our teachers and students and thank everyone involved in ensuring their education continues. And again, I urge the Joint Finance Committee to fund no more than 2.5% increase and give us a year to reevaluate. Thank you. Darrell W. Gould. So as I indicated to Mr. Gould, I would read this and put it into the record. If any other member has a comment, I will entertain it at this time on that statement. Mr. Sweeney? Thank
This time.
Mr. Contente? Thanks. Nate? Kerry? Mary? Tony? Tamara? Hang on one second. I'll turn my mic back on. Aaron, can you hear me? Do you have anything to say or you would like to add on that?
Yes, I can hear you. I don't have anything to say yet. I'll wait. Time to start moving on.
Thank you. If no other member has a question for the superintendent, I'm going to give him an opportunity to recap before we bring the discussion back to the committee. So I'm just going to go quickly around the room. Mr. Sweeney, anything else? Mr. Contente? Mr. Calero? Ms. Kerry? No. Mary? No. Tony? No. Ms. Tamara? Aaron, anything else? No, nothing at all. So Mr. Bryce, I'm sorry, Dr. Bryce, let me turn my mic back on. Dr. Bryce, I'm going to give you an opportunity to have any other closing remarks you'd like to add. I think you've been more than forthcoming and very informative with all your responses, and we definitely appreciate the time and effort that you've put into this. So, sir, the floor is yours.
So thank you. Let me start off by saying thank you for your leadership and just working to make sure that this has gone as smoothly as possible given the circumstances that we're dealing with. So I thank you very much, Mr. Galinda. Thank you to all the members of the JFC. This is certainly an interesting process. One of the things so I'm going to give you 2 points to take into your deliberations. Number one, I believe you when you say that you are supportive of education, that it is a priority, and that you want to make sure that we are helping our young people to grow and to develop. So I believe you when you say that. I believe that our young people also believe you when you say that, which brings the second point. The second point is that Bristol Warren Regional School District has the opportunity to become one of the best school systems, if not the best school system in the state of Rhode Island. What it is going to take is it is going to take all of our staff, all of our students, all of our community working together and to have the resources that will allow us to put the plans that I've already laid out that are very clear about becoming top 5 and 5, that focus on making sure that young people are engaged, that young people are learning, that they have multiple ways of measuring success, not just on state assessments, which are a part, but also on performance-based tasks, that our young people have the opportunity not only to prepare for college, but they also have the opportunity to prepare for the world of work. Remember, in that initial packet, we talked about the 18,000 jobs that electric boat is going to bring online in the next few years. We talk about the hundreds of jobs that are going to be brought on by manufacturers right here in Bristol Warren. We need to prepare our young people for those opportunities. We need to prepare young people for college. That can only be done if you give us the resources to do it. And so I do just once again ask you, and I understand the economic situation that we're in, but I also know that it is during times of an economic crisis that we really have to weed through all of the things that we think are important and figure out what really is important. And education is the most important thing because it sets our young people up for success into the future, and it will be something that really strengthens our community. With that, I rest my case. I hope that it has been something that you have heard that has touched your hearts, and hopefully we will be able to get, if not to that 3.985% number, we'll get very close. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bryce. I did have one request from our school committee chairperson, Erin Schofield, so I'm going to allow her to weigh in. Ms. Schofield, if you turn your mic on, the floor is yours. Can you talk louder, please? You're coming in a little soft. Still a little soft.
describe it in any way, I say it's because it's a difficult scenario in that we are given, the district is given the funding numbers, and then they're not what the superintendent has asked for, which is what and then the school district and school committee are responsible for making those cuts. I believe what the student is saying, we wrote in to Chairperson Yolanda, was saying that when you don't fund the district what it needs, then those programs such as band, extracurriculars, sports, those programs that bring kids joy, those get cut, not because anybody wants to cut those, but because it's a public administrative responsibility to make sure that kids are educated first and foremost. So when those things have to go away, it's unpleasant. We are accountable for that. We don't want to do that. I just wanted to make that point and to say that I understand that we can, it's always a good idea to appeal for our legislation and do something right. We're all in this together. I hope we can finally get together, work together on this, because like I said, the schools are going to need all of us more than ever, and as overused an expression as it is, the kids are our future, and we really need to be constantly having that in our lives. Thank you.
Let me just put my mic back on here. Thank you, Aaron. So seeing that there is nothing further for the superintendent, if there's any other further discussion on the committee members on the proposed budget, I'm just going to go over a couple of the protocols that we're going to use when we're going to get a motion. Let me put my mic back on. Sorry, Aaron. So if a member makes a motion, I will be writing it down and I will be repeating it verbatim so that there is no confusion on exactly what the motion is. If there is an amendment that wants to be added into the motion for a particular word, we'll have a discussion on that word and it'll either be voted upon and approved and the motion will get amended, or the motion will continue as originally stated. And then once it's seconded, we'll put the motion to the vote. If there's no questions, I'm going to open up the committee to any other comments or questions on the proposed budget. Go ahead, Mr. Sweeney.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to say that I believe in this school district's vision. Things are changing positively, and I think we could be one of the best school districts in the Rhode Island, in America. So I think tonight is the night, and Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve.
All right, so hold on one second. So I write not that fast. Go ahead.
Oh, no problem.
Yep.
I'd like to make a motion to approve, to everybody watching, fully fund the budget request that has been proposed by the Bristol Warren Regional School District to increase our funding by 3.985%, specifically to provide the funding of $40,575,133, an increase of $1,554,954. This would be an increase for Bristol of $919,250 and an increase for Warren of $635,704. Sorry. That clear?
Hold on, I may have to have you repeat a couple of things.
No.
The Warren number was what?
$635,704.
I see that. Okay.
Sorry. Yep.
So, if I'm following this correctly, your motion is to approve the fully funded budgeted request of 3.985%.
Correct, Mr. Chairman.
In the amount $40,575,133?
Correct.
Mr. Chair, just for a point of clarity, that would be the local aid, not the total budget. So the total budget would be based off what Mr. Sweeney just said. Bear with me, please. $57,098,862, which is what the school committee requested, which is a 3.98% increase, which is the total local aid of $40,575,133, as Mr. Sweeney said.
I would like to second the motion.
I'm not done yet. Yeah, I'm not done yet. I haven't even got there yet. So let's just hold on for a second. I will ask for the second when I have recorded the motion correctly.
Got it.
So I just want to make sure that I have the full figures in front of me. So reverting back, to approve the full fund budget request of 3.985% in the amount of $40,575,133. Is that correct? Okay. Which the Bristol amount would be $1,554,954?
No, that would not be the correct amount.
What's the amount?
Bristol's increase would be $919,250.
I'm sorry. The total fund would be $1,554,954?
Correct.
Okay.
The total.
And the Bristol amount would be $919,250.
Correct.
And the Warren amount would be $635,704.
Correct.
Okay. And what was the rest of your motion? After, because that's as far as I got, that $635,704.
That was it.
That was it. Okay. So to approve the full fund budget request of 3.985% as presented by the Bristol Warren Regional School District in the amount of $40,575,133 for a total fund amount of $1,554,954, equating to Bristol's share of $919,250 and the Warren share of $635,704. Is that your motion verbatim?
Yep.
Yes. Thank you. Is there any discussion? We can do both. We can do either way. Yeah. So if you want, I can put it to a second, and then we can go to discussion, or... Yeah. So is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. So seconded by, motion made by Councilman Sweeney. Second by Tamara Kaplan. Discussion.
So, discussion on my end. You heard earlier some rationale that there is extra dollars in the proposed school budget, specifically speaking to health care. It was talked about that it went the budgeted 14%, and by the way, that was budgeted at a time where they believed it was going to go up, but with new actuals at 9.9, we'll call it 10%, the current active is 4.8 million, and the current retirees is 2 million, so there's $6.8 million. The savings there is about $340,000. I'm almost done.
That's okay.
There was a question earlier about property and liability insurance, flood insurance, and fleet and vehicle insurance. Those numbers have gone up in 2017, about 30,000. In 2018, about 28,000. In 19, they went down a little bit. In 20, they went up about $30,000. This year, they went up $300,000. So those are pretty significant differences. And I know Dr. Bryce had responded to the property and liability insurance being an increase, but I don't believe that those numbers probably truly reflect the actual increase. And again, I understand this is budget, and I take no offense to requesting, but I do believe that those numbers are quite significant in an increase. We're talking about $310,000 versus $30,000 over the last X years. So I would propose, and I'd be happy to do this as an amended motion, that we don't do that whole 600. I guess what I just said is that there's about $300,000 in health care that we already know there is saving. Those are actual savings. And the proposed increase with the other insurances that I mentioned was 300,000. I don't believe it's going to be that much, but if we take that aside for a moment and assume that there's a little bit of wiggle room there, I would like us to see this budget approved for almost fully funding and make that adjustment for a fact that we know, which is that healthcare is not going up what was proposed here. So if we were to lower the proposed amount, the local amount that Mr. Sweeney had proposed, Vice Chairman Sweeney, excuse me, had proposed was $40,575,133. That's fully funding, said another way. Okay, that's the local aid. My proposal, and I'll make this in the form of a motion or amended motion, is that it would be $40,275,133. That's $300,000 less than fully funding, but we already know that the savings is there. Now, I represent Bristol, and I'm not afraid to speak openly about what we've talked about on the town council. It's all public. What was proposed by the administrator, rightly so, was less than that, and I believe it was done appropriately because we're at cap. We're at 3.98%, just like the school is asking for by state law. Where are we going to find this extra money that I'm proposing here? I have no idea. I think it's going to hurt a lot, but we've all talked about supporting. I can get to the support. I think we can make this increase from what the administrator proposed on the Bristol end of things. I think this will also help Warren, obviously, because it's less, but I believe it's based off fact. We know for a fact it is less. I think there's a lot more here too, but I'm not interested in talking about this at the moment. I think if we focus on something that we know is black and white and we decrease, we're not hurting the school at all. In essence, we are fully funding their request because we know this adjustment. They don't have to cut anything. Their budget is what their budget is. I think it's a win-win, and we offset some of the cost. We're all thinking it. I heard that we don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen with the coronavirus. That is such an understatement. And this budget was put in front of us way before this was an issue. There are people that called me today saying, I don't know, I don't have tenants anymore. The college left. What sounded like a great thing, right? For some, I don't think so, but for some, they don't have, how are they going to pay their mortgages? These are real things that are going to get worse and worse. But notice what I personally think, we can lower what we're proposing here. I have no idea how we're going to put that into the budget, and I mean that honestly. We're going to have to make some serious cuts on our side of things, but I think it's appropriate. So my motion is, based off all the things I've just told you already, in fact, is to amend that motion made by Mr. Sweeney to $40,275,133. And that motion is based off the total local number. So I'm going to say that one more time. What the school was proposing in their budget was $40,575,133. I'm proposing decreasing that by $300,000 to $40,275,133 for local aid, based off the fact that we already know that the health insurance is not going to cost what they budgeted. That is my motion.
Can I ask a question back to that?
So first we have to have whether or not that amendment is going to be seconded. So the amendment has been seconded. So we will put that to a vote on whether or not that amendment takes place and replaces the $40,575,133. We can have a discussion, absolutely. Yep.
Correct.
But it'll eventually go to a vote. It'll eventually go to a vote because the motion has been made and it has been seconded. It'll go to a vote to make a determination on whether or not his motion stays or it gets amended to the amount that Mr. Calero put forward.
But wasn't the first motion seconded as well? So
Yes.
should that have the same weight as the amended motion?
No.
The amended motion takes precedence as in straight Roberts rules, and then if there could be actually
One more amendment.
correct.
There can be one more
This is
amendment.
the primary amendment if there's another one.
Yes.
But we're in discussion phase at this point.
Yes, so we're in discussion.
So,
your question is, go ahead.
Okay, so my question then is, they already took $1 million and cut $1 million out of the budget already, which, so basically it's then cutting $1,300,000.
No, it's not, because they budgeted, as I said, they budgeted for something that actually changed. Again, They based that information off what they had in front of them at the time. With the new information, they know for a fact that the increase is 300. It's actually more than that, but I'm actually rounding low too. It's more than that, but they know it's not going to cost them that $300,000 extra. I'm saying amend it so it reflects that. It affects their budget 0% at that point. They don't have to cut anything. It's exactly what they're asking for, knowing that's changed. And on the other part of it is that I mentioned on those other numbers, there is more. And I'm not going through 50s, hundreds, thousands, and 10,000s, and they're there. I didn't think that was appropriate at this level.
Most certainly.
So that 300, what would be the Bristol share of that? I mean, I roughly did it as 50-50. It's not 50-50, that's the thing. What would our number come down to, and what would Warren's come down to?
Yeah. So I'll answer that question directly. So with that adjusted number of $40,275,133, that is the total local aid, okay? Bristol's share of that was $919. It is now $730,820. I'll say that one more time. $730,820. Warren's portion of that new number, if you will, is $524,134. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Could you repeat that?
I can. You want both numbers again?
I got them, yeah.
The Warren.
Warren's share would be $524,134.
I would like to, just part of my discussion.
Yes, go ahead.
Part of it.
Yep.
You know, I think it should go down, if we're going to give more than what our placeholder number was, which was our administrator and we sat through our budget hearings every night last week, 6 feet apart, trying to make sure that we could, come up with something. We still have a pretty substantial tax increase. And there are lots of things in the budget that I was a little surprised at, but they're not our doing. Like EPA has mandated us to do certain things, $100,000 item. And so there's not a lot of wiggle room in there. And I actually think that figure that we originally had was 2/3 of what was requested. So it's a substantial increase. However, if you go along with Chairman Nathan's, our Bristol Town Council Chairman's thinking, why wouldn't we lower that just slightly more so that we're at maybe like around 700,000 or 695,000? Because if you looked at you're talking about the savings in healthcare, correct?
Correct.
But there's also potential savings in liability because Dr. Bryce said that was a placeholder.
Correct.
Right. So there's that's almost the amount right there. That's almost a 600,000. That's the difference. And then on the healthcare, and just to go back to that, one thing that concerned me a little bit is because they're talking about going into negotiations, that he may need that money. I would imagine that only means that they're going to give something more to the staff and the teachers or whatever union they're doing, whoever's they're negotiating with, because the increase for whatever their plan is right now is the increase. And where it changes, potentially maybe if people retire or things like that, but the only way that it would change substantially would be in negotiations. They give them some sort of a benefit as opposed to something in money. That's the only way it would happen. So I don't think that we've never done that. I think, Steve, you said last week we had three contracts coming up, 3 or 5, 3 coming up this year. I mean, we didn't, like we said, oh, great, we got the savings of that percentage. I mean, I think that's great. I mean, I think there's enough money in here. Now, I understand your point is that, they already cut money out, so we should give them everything. But the problem with this whole thing, and why I always go back to the state, and it is everybody's problem, it is everybody has to share in this, is that it's always falling on the town taxpayers. And it's very, very, very difficult. I mean, people are literally being priced out of their homes. I'm not sure that some of the students realize that it may be their friends who are going to be forced out of Bristol, and the quality of education they're getting to another community because they can no longer afford. It's a serious issue. On top of all of this, the coronavirus, I'm not trying to be overly dramatic about it. I am substantially very, very, very worried. You go down through downtown Warren, you go through downtown Bristol. I was at my office today. I went down Hope Street in Providence. I went into Wayland Square. Everything is closed. There's going to be substantial business there already is this disruption. What do we do with that? How do we go and face our local business owners who are hanging on literally by a thread, our homeowners who are laid off?
Yeah. No
one knows how long this is going to last. Look, I would love to see this virus just disappear by next week. That would be awesome. But this could go on for months and months and months and months. And if it does, how can we, in good conscience, continue to add the tax burden to our taxpayers? I personally feel it's irresponsible. I was planning to vote against the budget if it was fully funded. I mean, if it's a little bit more, I think Nathan's is a little bit more too generous, because I think there's more savings in his plan than just that one item that he mentioned. So that's my thought.
Did you have something that you wanted to add, Tony? You seemed like you were ready to make a comment, so.
No, I concur with Mary. I mean, obviously, we are trying to meet the needs. There's no question about it. I mean, I've worked through budgets for 10 years, in governmental budgets. And, folks know what they put in there and what's in the budget. And I concur with Chairman Caloro and Councilman Mary Perella that they can certainly manage their budget with what's being proposed, the cuts. And I mean, as Councilman Perella pointed out, I think we're still a little generous. I would have knocked 500 out of that. 500,000.
So I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yes, absolutely.
I like Chairman Caloro's approach to this, and I like the word, what he said, it's fact-based. Okay, so we're preserving the budget that was introduced to us, and we spent a great deal of time and thought in our Bristol municipal budget. But I think after this had to run its course, I think we had to listen to the presentation, we had to ask these questions, and then we all have to decide what's our priority and what are we going to lose on the town side. But I think if education, and I know it's important to all of you here, if it's as important as we say it is, we have new administration in the school district. They're going through trying times. The teachers are proving themselves. I've seen it with my own eyes. They're proving themselves. I think the chairman's approach is good with the reduction of the $300,000 that we know that does not have to be paid. And I think we should move forward and go back to our towns and find out what sacrifices are we going to make. And it's going to be tough. We thought we had the end product, but I think we're going to have to make additional sacrifices in our own towns after listening to what we listened to tonight in keeping education as a priority. So that's where I'm at.
If I may, Mr. Chair?
You may.
Just to add something else to it is that we can't require this, but Dr. Bryce, when I met Dr. Bryce back in October of last year, he was very clear to say he wanted a 5-year plan. And I'm going to speak real plainly here. There's no 5-year plan. There's a 5 and 5, but I believe that letter spoke about it earlier about where are the guidelines? Right. Where are we getting to? Let's also speak real plainly. Do you know where we are in the state for our rankings? We're mid-pack at best. Do you know where we are with funding? Despite the comments that we've heard, top 5, better than that. So it is not about the financing. It is about where are we going to go next year? Because I got to tell you something, that we've suggested some improvements with all of this, but we can't continue to do this. This is unsustainable. And as much as we all love education, and we've all said it, this is unsustainable. So next year, I'm saying, yeah, I made this motion, right? This cost them nothing. It's fully funding, in essence, their budget. But next year, we can't do this again. So I had a conversation earlier with Vice Chairman Sweeney, and I think all of you are in the same place, is that we need to have quarterly meetings like this. We need to know, and this is not my idea, this is not anybody's here idea, this is ideas that have come over years ago, maybe Mary. Sorry, Mary.
You actually bring up a good point, because that's on our agenda.
But where I was going is that we need to be where our towns are, which is in the 2% zone. And these things need to come now. And there are systems in place right now. They need to find that. They need to get the money back for free and reduced lunch. If they had all of that money, we're at $400,000 loss approximately from the state. It would be $18,000. No conversation right now. Done. So I am finger pointing at the school. That is their responsibility. I brought it up earlier. Yes, the doctor has brought some points that he's going to address this, but it's got to be addressed right now. We lost 53 students last year. That is the district's responsibility. But I started with free and reduced because that's a hard but easy lift at the same time. So this right now is to fully fund in essence. Next year cannot be 4%. It can't be 3%. Well, I mentioned when we met Dr. Bryce, when I met Dr. Bryce back in October, I said 2.5% was probably a reasonable spot at the top because of all the things going on. Lastly, I agree, as Vice Chairman Sweeney said and the administrator said, that this is the last time we're going to see this decrease. But we need help from the schools, too, moving forward. We cannot continue to have these kind of dialogues and put us in a place where we're putting the taxpayers at risk. People are losing their homes. We literally had that meeting, and we had to leave the room because 5 people were going to tax sale. This is reality. This isn't disconnected. This isn't funny money that's coming from somewhere else. This is real people. So, I know that was a lot, and I apologize. That's my motion.
Well,
Nope.
I'd just like to say...
You're fine.
Sorry.
No, Mary, the floor is yours.
I just want to say, Carrie mentioned earlier about the parents and hearing from students, parents, teachers, and how important that is. It absolutely is. There's also another whole group of people that don't do the main advocacy as they probably should. And there are people that we run into on the street, it used to be at church and in grocery stores, not so much now, that who have children in the school, who say, I cannot afford the taxes, I cannot continue to do this. They're not going to come forward because their kids are friends with the kids of the leaders of the parent groups, things like that. They're not going to come out there with all their teachers and principals usually sitting at the meeting and saying, I can't really afford this any longer. But they'll tell us individually. And I'm not talking about seniors. Everybody wants to say, it's the seniors, that's the past generation. These are people who live in, teaching jobs, police officer jobs, middle income people that cannot keep these increases. I think the tax increase is way too much for this year, given what's happened and how this thing seems to be playing out. I think if you were going to give them more money, it should probably be like in another year, not now when there maybe is more of a plan. I just think that it's too much. We can go back. We could probably find $100,000 in our budget, maybe $150,000, but I'm not sure what else. So people say. What I always say to people is, Bristol's a community. I'm only speaking for that end. It is not just a bedroom community that's only focused on schools. There are many, many activities and things going on in our town that makes Bristol what it is. Cultural activities, historic activities, all kinds of concerts and recreation and everything else. That is why you would move to Bristol. And all this stuff, all I ever hear about is the real estate agents. Maybe the real estate agents need to get a little lesson on what is going on in our schools, what's going on in our towns, and if they're discouraging people, that is on them. But I'm sick of hearing it at these meetings, the real estate agents are telling me I shouldn't move here. Okay, this is what Bristol is, this is what Warren is, this is what Barrington is. You have to decide as a family what is your priority, too. Because, as Nathan said, we're one of the top funded districts in the state. So, where's the disconnect? It's not just pouring money into the problem, is it? It's a blank check. Where this ends is it never ends. That's the problem. And It's not a problem. We need help. We need help from the state. We cannot continue to do it all the time. And I love education. I work in education. I mean, I work in education for a zillion years, trying to break the cycle of poverty so that kids have equal access as adults. I understand all of this, but people have to continue to live in our communities, and we just cannot keep raising the taxes because, they're a very loud, vocal group of people that I love them. Many of them I know from other things. I think they're terrific at what they do, and I think the kids are terrific at coming forward. But I mean, it's all put on us, and so we just basically wasted last week. That's what we did. Because everybody at our council meeting was pretty much in agreement with what that placeholder was. And now we just go back and undo the whole thing. I think it would have been a whole lot better had people been upfront about it when we were doing our budget, because it was just last Thursday that we finished.
Aaron would like to speak and weigh in. So, Councilman Lay, the floor is yours.
Sorry about the delay. Look, I get it. I know that when you're running for town council, like I was a couple of years ago, it's a lot. Raising taxes looks a lot different than when you get into a position like this. When you get into this position, you recognize the enormous responsibility that comes with raising that tax rate. And one of the things that I looked at, though, was that under the recommended budget, in Bristol anyways, we had $14.12, I believe. But then if we fully fund, we go to $14.21 per thousand. And so what that'll do, whatever decision we make, whether we go with Chairman Caloro's amendment or if we fully fund, which I'm going to support, Bristol at least is still going to be the 9th. I think I looked it up before today's meeting. We have the 9th lowest tax rate in Rhode Island. And even if we go from 1412 to 1421, we're probably still going to have the 9th lowest tax rate in Rhode Island. And like I said, I'm not trying to minimize this. I'm not trying to do anything like that. I'm just not trying to not recognize the enormous responsibility that comes with increasing taxes. But at the same time, I recognize the enormous responsibility of recognizing the critical moment that we're in right now and what this is going to mean for some of these students who are going to become our scientists, our engineers, our nurses, our engineers, our bioengineers, the scientists that are working in libraries, and the plumbers and the home builders and the people like that need the skills that they need. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm in favor of fully funding this budget, and that's how I plan to vote today.
Is there any other discussion on Mr. Caloro's amendment?
Yes.
Go ahead, Carrie. The floor is yours.
Okay. So, having heard all of this, and with the full weight of the obligation that we have to all members of our community, and when I said earlier that I had overwhelming response from people supporting and advocating for fully funding, I also did get outreach from people who did not want to fully fund this budget. To fully fund the budget, the town of Warren would exceed the 4% cap by 0.93%, which would be a $225,000 cut we would have to make to our municipal budget. With the quick math done to Mr. Caloro's, or Chairman Caloro's proposal, that would be a 2.69, or it would be a 4.41 increase, or 0.41% increase over the cap for Warren, and would be about $112,000 cut that we would have to make to our municipal budget. And I'm thinking, when do we do this? When do we make this happen? I am eyes wide open to what we are all experiencing with this pandemic, and I don't know what the future holds as far as our small businesses, our manufacturing, our state, our country. It's very unknown and it's really scary. But I also know that we have been really shortchanging our students and not funding to a level that would give them the opportunity to do the things that Dr. Bryce has been really championing and explaining now for so long. And I think this is a fair budget. I think it's a reasonable budget. I think it's a budget that will do the things that we all really know need to get done. And as much as I would like to fully fund, I could live with the middle ground, with the 4.41% increase, and it will hurt, but I think it's the right thing to do, because as one of our students said, investment in education. What was her words? Her words were, education is not an.
It's not an expense. It's an investment in the future.
It's an investment.
Yeah.
And I've always been a real sort of, I've always used the, education is economic development. You open your business, you choose to buy a home in a community that funds its schools, that has a good school system. People make investments in good things. And we're really at that point where people are making the decision not to keep their kids in our school system. People are taking their kids out of our school system. People are choosing to move elsewhere. People we are related to are making those decisions. And with the exodus of these students, that decreases our enrollment. When the enrollment drops, the aid drops that's attached to those numbers. We are seeing that. We've discussed that today. And we have to stop it at some point, and we have to make a difficult decision and stand behind a budget that is really, really good. And this is a hard one, but I would support Chairman Caloro's motion. Amended motion.
Okay.
As I feel that it is my responsibility to take some pressure off that the full fund would, but this would also get us to a place that would be closer to where we need to be.
Go ahead, Mr.
I just feel compelled to answer Ms. Perella's, and I think she was directing that at me about being up front. My budget was due. Let me finish, please. Friday the 13th, that's when my budget was due. That was a world away, okay? A world away. And what I've witnessed in the last 10 days has been quite a few changes. And I think, yes, I'm the administrator that recommends a budget. I'm also a JFC member. I have a right to listen at this hearing to what the testimony is, answer the questions that I had emailed to Dr. Bryce, and then come up with how much do I think is affordable for the town of Bristol. We need to make changes on the municipal side. I have a right to be flexible as the administrator and fluid, because I'm there every day and I listen to how the community is changing. So I did change my budget, and I am going to vote, if it comes to a full vote, with Chairman Caloro's recommendation. So yes, it is more than my original budget, but that was a world away. So things have changed. I've witnessed remarkable things with the district. I don't think this is the time for us to say we're not supporting the school district. I think we should look at our budget again under these circumstances and determine what doesn't apply anymore. And that's what I said during our first budget deliberation for the local municipal budget. I said, I'm not sure if this budget really applies considering what's going on here, but we're being optimistic and we need to get a budget passed, and it can always be amended later on. So in my defense, in the position's defense of town administrator, it is fluid. You make decisions, you stick with decisions, but as things develop, you do as the community wants you to do, to the best to your ability. Thank you.
I remind everyone this is fully funding,
Yes.
right? Because in essence, it is fully funding. So it is not what they asked for, but it gives them everything they asked for.
Yeah. Is there any other discussion on the amended motion by Mr. Calero? Mr. Lay, do you have anything else?
I don't think he hears you.
No, it's like,
There's a delay. Thank you. So, with that said, with what Mr. Contente's remarks were, things have just changed so rapidly since the last time we met. I'll share a little tidbit story that when the last JFC meeting was occurring, that Mr. Contente and I were sitting next to each other. And there is no secret that we used to work together. And there's probably no secret that we didn't always see eye to eye together, but we did have some mutual respect. And I leaned over to him and I said, 25 years ago, would you ever think we'd be sitting here at a JFC meeting? And he just kind of chuckled. Well, 20 days ago, did you ever think that we would be sitting in a JFC meeting and we'd be doing it virtually with individuals sitting all over the state and located in another state? So much has changed that our responsibility has also changed with the information that's been brought to the board. So, with that said, if there's no further discussion, I will take the amended motion presented by Mr. Calero of eliminating the number of 40575-133 and replacing it with the number of 40275-133. All in favor? Please by signify so I can record it accurately. Mr. Sweeney. Mr. Contente. Mr. Calero.
I hope I say aye. I made the motion, so aye.
Well, on a civics matter, just because you make a motion and you second it, you don't have to vote for it.
Very clear on
Okay.
Robert's rules here.
Mrs. Cronin.
Aye.
Mrs. Perella. Mr. Texera.
Aye.
Ms. Kaplan.
Nay.
Mr. Lay.
About 10 seconds.
That is a little delay. And Mr. Kalenda votes aye. So the amended motion passes 7-2. So the original motion will be amended to take out the 40575-133 and replace it with the 40275-133. With that motion being amended, is there a second? Do we not need a second?
Nope.
Okay, that's true. I'm sorry. I apologize. Yes. We can open up discussion for the new motion that is before the committee. Mr. Sweeney, it was your original motion. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
Well, I think it's a fair motion. We are essentially full funding. We know that there is money that there's flexibility there. So in a sense, I'm pleased that the schools will be full funded essentially, and we're gonna work forward to make sure that these schools are in a balanced budget. We're going to meet more often as JFC members. We're going to review the enabling legislation, and we're going to make sure that we're not just meeting twice a year. We're going to meet more often, work closely with the school committee, work closely with Dr. Bryce, and make sure that we're forecasting and we're moving forward on the 5-year plan. So with that said, that's it. Good night.
Mr. Contente, anything? We got to take it to a vote yet. Yeah, we haven't. Yep. Nate? Carrie?
In line with what Mr. Sweeney is saying, with the review of the enabling legislation, I think we also need to think about sort of syncing up the budget dates and process so that we're not trying to create budgets and pass budgets that we don't have all the information on. And that happens on our municipal side, that we've just been struggling for years to set budgets that we don't have all of the data, all of the numbers. We don't have the revenue. We don't have the enrollment. We don't have the insurance. There's so many numbers that are just sort of up in the air and unknown, and it doesn't seem like a smart way to do it. So I am comfortable with this amount, and with the I appreciate that you are acknowledging that we do need to dive deep into this document and maybe consider other ways of funding education that will be a little bit more predictable, equitable, fair, sustainable, all of those words, because we really are, it is our failure if we don't set this straight right here, right now, and move forward united in that.
Mrs. Perella, anything? Tony? Tamara, anything?
I just want to say thank you, and that I appreciate being able to serve on this committee with you all. So,
Aaron, is there anything else, discussion on the motion that's before us?
Thank you for asking. I just want to say that while my preference would have been to fully fund the schools, I think that this is probably the closest then that we're going to get. I think that this still is going to go a long way toward achieving Dr. Bryce's goals. I think I'm really excited to see the progress that's being made, and certainly we are going to be paying attention and engaging with the schools, and really really looking forward to seeing how things are moving forward with some of the plans that he has. And I think that this is a good package maybe to start out with, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Thank you. So to go over the motion that we have before us that has been duly seconded, I'm going to repeat it so that there is no questions. The motion was made by Councilman Sweeney, and it was amended by Councilman Calero to approve fully funded budget request of 3.985%. That number actually has changed now. So I don't know if anyone has done the math, or we can remove that portion of it.
Would you like all the numbers?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the motion is a summary operations cost of $55,216,412 with a debt service of $1,582,450, which makes a total authorization of $56,798,862. The breakdown is as follows. Total non-local aid, $16,523,729, with a local aid of $40,275,133, again for a total authorization of $56,798,862. And I have that all written here in a motion for you.
May I see it? Yeah. So the 40,275,133 stays the same.
Correct.
That's fine. That's amended.
Correct.
So we can accept the motion that is before us with removing the 40275-133 and adding the 40275-133. So approve full fund budget of 40275-133, and the amount relevant to Bristol is 730-820, and relevant to Warren is 524-134. We had a duly second. I will do roll call vote. Mr. Sweeney? We have an aye. Mr. Contente? Aye. We have an aye. Mr. Calero?
Aye.
We have an aye. Mrs. Cronin?
Aye.
Mrs. Perella?
Vote yes, but I hope that you have metrics and really follow through what we say. Yes.
Mary, till you vote. Mic on, please. Thank you. Mrs. Perella has voted in the affirmative. Mr. Texera?
Aye.
Mrs. Kaplan?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Lay?
Aye.
Mr. Lay has voted in the affirmative and the aye. Mr. Calendar also votes in an aye. We have the motion before us. It passes unanimously 9-0. Before we adjourn, we did have an organizational meeting on the agenda. Mr. Calero has mentioned that we should be meeting quarterly. I had been saying that since I took over as chair going into last year. I am going to organize some dates, and I will have them sent via email through our clerk, Ms. Fortin, and I would appreciate if we could all agree on some scheduling dates coming up in the months of either September, October, or November. If there's no further discussion, I will entertain a motion for adjournment. Yes, you may. Yes, yes.
I mean, I was thinking of requesting this of our town council, but maybe it would be better joint finance committee. We need a joint meeting with the legislators because we really got to get that done. I mean, so if we're going to meet in September and invite the rest of the council members and all of our legislators and make that the agenda item.
Well put.
Yeah, that, you know something, that's an excellent idea. We attended a legislative breakfast, maybe something along those lines.
In sort of anticipation of tonight's outcome, I've already got that as an agenda item for our April meeting, and it would be a sit-down with all of our legislators and our councils to try to move forward. I agree completely, and it's on the books.
Because I was going to put that in, but I mean, they're not even meeting right now either. So
Right.
They're going to be so far behind on everything, plus no money. So.
Maybe we don't do the Google chat. Maybe we use a Zoom or something, because this is a bit of a nutty thing. I'm sure the live stream isn't helping, but whether we get together in a room when we can, and it's safe to do so, it is absolutely it's on our schedule. Should our council approve moving forward with that? But I believe we will.
I think that if you don't want to, I mean, I think that this agenda item, while I was thinking of myself of doing it for this session, I don't think it's going to happen anyway because one, they have no money. Mm-hmm. You know, the casinos, everything's closed.
Yep.
And two, you know, they're not even meeting. So the backlog of just their committees, like I'm surprised they're not even doing their committee meetings. So whether it happened before the summer or right during the summer or right after the summer, it's probably at this point doesn't make a lot of difference, but it needs to get done by the next legislative session because this has just been going on too long. And I would open that meeting as well. When I was thinking about it is to, you know, some of the parents and the group, like it's a public meeting anyway, but they're the ones that have to really like go up there and advocate for it as well as we do, you know.
I agreed. I think the initial work group should maybe be a little smaller. So, and while our bellies are really burning for this to happen, I think it's important to sort of strike while the fire is hot and get this down on paper and let them know what we're thinking. And then that will probably develop into a longer process of review and editing and whatnot.
Well, here's the one good thing about it. We actually have time.
We know they do. We know what they do, and we know where they live.
So if there's a motion
So
for
moved.
adjournment? So moved. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Good night. Thank you very much for everyone who is watching. Please be safe. Please stay healthy. We'll get through this together. Good night.